Dear Excellencies, dear participants, dear friends, I am very pleased as President of COMECE to greet you at the beginning of the International Conference on the Role of Christians in the Process of European Integration. Even if this is the first conference in a new series of meetings, it builds upon the significant legacy of international conferences hosted by Bishop Tadeusz Pironek of Cracow since 2001. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the foundation carrying his name, the Tadeusz Pironek Foundation, as well as to the other conference partners for taking forward the task of promoting Christian values in contemporary Europe by cherishing this important space for dialogue between politics, academia, media, and the Church. This year's conference carries the title Christians of Europe in the Face of Crises, discussing the value system crisis, the crisis of representative democracy, as well as the climate change crisis and its consequences for humanity. Hearing the word crisis and reflecting on the role of Christians makes me think of the letter to Diognetus, an early Christian work whose author states that what the soul is to the body, Christians are to the world. This is, I think, precisely the vocation of Christians in today's European societies that are confronted with these multiple crises. As Pope Francis recalled at the Rethinking Europe dialogue organized by COMECE and the Holy See Secretariat of State in October 17, in our day, Christians are called to revitalize Europe and to revive its conscience, not by occupying spaces, but by generating processes capable of awakening new energies in society. The role of Christians as bearers of hope is all the more pertinent in the context of the pandemic we are now experiencing. Whereas many people in Europe may look to their future with uncertainty, others continue to look to Europe with hope, relying on it as a source of development and a promise of peace in the world and to humanity. A great prophet of hope, St. John Paul II, calls in his apostolic exhortation Ecclesia in Europa for a rediscovery of Europe's true identity. To give new impetus to its own history, Europe must recognize and reclaim with creative fidelity those fundamental values acquired through a decisive contribution of Christianity, which can be summarized in the affirmation of the transcendent dignity of the human person, the value of reason, freedom, democracy, the constitutional state, and the distinction between political life and religion. In the present social, political, and cultural context, we are, however, often experiencing what Pope Benedict XVI used to refer to as the relativization of truth, which also applies to our understanding of values. Accelerated with the technological progress and its implications for human relations and the relationship with reality, such a relativization of values tends to expose them to the influence of various ideologies, filling them with contents that are increasingly likely to come into conflict with one another. being confronted with tendencies to reduce or change the meaning of the values that inspire the foundation of the European project, Christians are called to contribute to a solidification of the value system, to make it again an unambiguous reference framework that provides clear guidance to policies and actions in a rapidly changing world. Even if, with the ongoing conference on the future of Europe, we are all asked to look to our future, Europe cannot ignore the Judeo-Christian roots and needs to acknowledge that the founding values of the Union are the fruit of a historical process with contributions from political, cultural, and also religious traditions of our continent. Without memory, there is no future. In order to live faithfully to these values also today and in the future, Pope Francis reminds us that perhaps the greatest contribution that Christians can make to today's Europe is to remind her that she is not a mass of statistics or institutions, but is made up of people. Sadly, we see how frequently issues get reduced to discussions about numbers. There are no citizens, only votes. There are no migrants, only quotas. There are no workers, only economic markers. There are no poor, only thresholds of poverty. In this respect, the COVID-19 pandemic is a good opportunity for politics and society to rediscover the centrality of the human dignity of each person. Christians may also bring hope in reinvigorating a true experience of democracy. Nowadays, the exercise of democracy often tends to be reduced to mere right to vote, rather than to the possibility of actively contributing to the building up of a genuine community in view of the common good. Unfortunately, also in Europe, we are witnessing tendencies towards futile antagonisms that aim to polarize and divide our societies. To provide an antidote to these realities, Pope Francis encourages us that as Christians, we are called to promote political dialogue, especially where it is threatened and where conflict seems to prevail. Christians are called to restore dignity in politics and to view politics as a lofty service to the common good, not a platform for power. In a few days' time, a key political event for humanity's future will take place in Glasgow, the 26th UN Climate Change Summit, COP26, that aims to accelerate actions towards the goals of the Paris Agreement. The climate crisis is yet another challenge where Christians, together with other religious communities, can offer hope. Sharing the same concern for creation, Pope Francis, together with the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, Archbishop Justin Welby, and other faith leaders, issued an urgent appeal to take a better care for the human family and for the environment in which it lives. In their joint statement, leaders representing the world's major religious traditions underlined that multiple crises facing humanity are ultimately linked to a crisis of values, ethical and spiritual. We are caretakers of the natural environment with a vocation to care for it for future generations and the moral obligation to cooperate in the healing of the planet. We must address these challenges using the knowledge of science and the wisdom of religion. Let me conclude by referring to 4 dreams and hopes of Pope Francis for Europe, which he expressed in a letter to Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of COMECE last year. Pope Francis dreams of a Europe that is a friend to each and all, and is respectful of the intrinsic dignity of each human person. He dreams of a Europe that is family and community, living in unity and treasuring differences. He also dreams of a Europe that is inclusive and generous, welcoming and hospitable, abiding by the virtue of charity and the principle of solidarity. And Pope Francis dreams of a Europe marked by a healthy secularism, where God and Caesar remain distinct but not opposed, a land open to transcendence. These are the hopes of Pope Francis for Europe. As Christians, each one of us, according to his or her own specific mission and call, ought to serve as a leaven in reviving Europe's memory and generating processes that lead to the future we dream for our continent. I wish that also this year's international conference in Cracow may contribute to this important process. Thank you very much. God's blessing upon your work, and have a nice meeting.